This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome everybody to this week's DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. A funny intro because typically Adam intros the show, but later on you'll hear, because I'm recording this after me and Adam just got off the phone. Always love talking to my guy, but it was funny, we were talking about AEW production issues, and before we started recording, I was just telling him on this Saturday morning how tired I was, and like always, the biggest thing in a podcast is you got to remember to hit record. So the intro that he recorded, I looked at the screen and I'm like, oops, I didn't put the SD card in. I didn't even hit record. So you'll start this podcast with Adam talking about our first topic, which was the fact that during Monday Night Raw, it was something that was unique in that Jey Uso was the Intercontinental Champion, and in the end, his reign doesn't last as long as Adam and I thought. And we'll start the podcast with Adam introing the topic of, hey, did Jey Uso deserve to lose the title? What I had said in a great intro that, of course, doesn't get recorded is, you know, I'm going to TNA. TNA Bound for Glory will take place. This podcast comes out on Sunday or Monday, and the event will have happened, Bound for Glory. I have an opportunity to go with a friend. I'm excited. And what I had said was Joe Hendry did not take advantage of an opportunity and an invite to come on the Detroit Sports Podcast. He did a lot of media, television, networks, and busted open, but didn't take advantage of a DSP invite, so I'm hoping he eventually loses the title match to Nick Nemeth. So we start the podcast with Adam talking about Intercontinental title loss to Braun Breaker, and what does that mean? Because it seems like Triple H lately has not been allowing the mid-carders with titles, the women's tag team, the IC belt, their reigns have been in the 60 to 80 day range. So we start there. This is the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast, and thanks everybody for listening. We had a good episode this week, so enjoy our talk this week recapping WWE and AEW and TNA Bound for Glory, a little preview.
I get that this is working towards a greater storyline, and I understand that, but I feel like the changing of the championship belt was not necessary to help move that storyline along. And I feel like this was one of those things where they're like, hey, Jay, we're going to give you a bit of a run, but it ain't going to be a long run. But it'll be your first one. And Jay was like, where do I sign? And he signed on that dotted line. So was it a wasted run for Jey Uso to be the IC champ?
It's crazy, right? It just makes you think that Triple H has ADHD right now going, hey, 80 days is kind of where the female tag team has gone with the title reigns. Jey Uso deserved a little bit more. It kind of felt like, and you didn't want to feel this way, and you didn't want to disrespect Jey Uso, but it kind of felt like Triple H and WWE heard the complaints of his family and said, "Oh yeah, we kind of have to give this guy a belt so that people can kind of, you know, not keep saying that we are wasting Jey Uso, especially knowing that he's part of a family with the biggest star in the company." So it kind of felt like the word to use is kind of like placate someone, to just say, yeah, pat him on the back, let's make him happy for 80 days and keep it moving. I do think it was a wasted run. I do think that when you look at Jey Uso and the crescendo, you don't think he deserved at least 6 months? Like more wins, more opportunities, get himself over? I think that you can still have the feud with the Civil War, with the Intercontinental title belt. I think that people can expand their mind to say Jey Uso can have individual feuds, and at the same time, there are multiple shows. You can do different things. I just feel like and I understand that Breaker is somebody that is going to be big in the company, but I feel like the title reigns outside of the world titles have kind of been wishy-washy, and it kind of, to me, slightly diminishes the IC belt.
I would agree with you. I think Braun Breaker is a guy who they are very high on. I think Braun Breaker's got a great look. I think he has a really good energy when he's in the ring. He's not bad on the microphone. I think he's a very interesting guy. But to remove the title from him and put it on a guy who is, let's just be honest, at this point, Jey Uso is like 6 levels above Braun Breaker. to put a title on that guy and only let him run with it for a couple of days, for a couple of weeks, I feel like is a total disservice. And I feel like when you start changing belts, we talk about this all the time. The thing that makes the belts so important is when they have these long-term storylines, when they have these feuds that resonate, and the champion is able to overcome the obstacles and the odds. To have it done this way, where the bloodline gets involved, and again, like I said, I understand it's being used for storyline purposes. I get that. But the bloodline gets involved and it ends up costing him his championship. I feel like this is the perfect time where Jey Uso can overcome all of these things. This is why he's your champion. Not use it as a way to get the belt off of him and get it on somebody new. To me, it just feels like it was done poorly. It was done to me, it didn't do Jey Uso any good, and I don't think it necessarily elevates Braun Breaker. I think, and that's the one thing you want, right? When you come out of one of these matches, you want to be able to elevate the new champion. Do you feel like Braun Breaker is any further along than where he was at the start of the week? Because I don't necessarily do. I don't think this title win help move him forward, help advance him, or make me look at him any different.
Yeah.
Do you look at him like he's any better?
Because if you're like a guy like The Miz who's been grinding and wants to be in the top, you sit back and if you do a podcast or you sit back and you're talking to your friends, I'm sure one of his friends are like, yeah, Breaker's one of Triple H's boys. And what ends up happening is, and it's the same thing in life. Sometimes if you're close to somebody, it's sometimes not about what you know, but who you know. And I truly believe that when Triple H invests in people in NXT, like a Braun Breaker who's been tabbed as next, they end up getting a run. And this run for Braun Breaker, would you say it's earned? I do think he's over. I think he's got a look. I think that clearly that when Triple H sits across from Breaker, he gets all the nostalgia of all the time he spent with WCW with Scott Steiner and all the relationship there and the family. So to me, it's unfortunate because at the expense of Jey Uso, I would have not put the belt on Braun Breaker. I just felt like Braun got the great run. It was good. It was, same thing, relatively short term. Now he should go off and create some more feuds or try to be a menace, maybe be a silent menace for the new bloodline or something like that. Because technically, Braun Breaker is part of the technical bloodline of WWE. So you could have did so many more creative things with Braun Breaker and Jey Uso, but look, it's at this point, I believe Breaker is one of Triple H's guys. He's getting pushed to the moon, and that's why probably, to be honest with you, that's why Ricochet left. He's like, I'm not one of the guys. I thought I was. I'm not one of the guys. I'm basically viewed as this. It's never going to go anywhere. I'm not getting the rocket ship, so I got to go show Triple H that I'm important, and that's where it is. And maybe that's what Triple H wants for some of these guys is to say, hey, what are you going to do about it? You're not happy? Move on. Do something. Get yourself over and come back a bigger star, and we'll pay you. So, to me, it just sucks because I do think Jey Uso got gypped here.
Yeah, I agree with you 110%. I just don't believe you needed to take the belt off him to advance the storyline that we're going to talk about here in a few moments. But either way, Braun Breaker's your new champion. Jey Uso, short run as the IC champ. It was fun while it lasted. I don't know if we ever get back there because what we're going to talk about here very, very shortly, it may be back to the tag division for Jey Uso. We'll see. Speaking of tag division, we have new SmackDown tag team champs. Look, very few things in wrestling make me get out of my seat with excitement, and very few things in wrestling surprise me. And what took place on Friday night with the Motor City Machine Guns, one, surprised me, and two, made me incredibly happy and got me out of my seat. I think the last time I jumped out of my seat with excitement was when it was Sami Zayn almost beating Roman Reigns. I thought he had him on the ropes, and I was like, if they're going to do it, this is when they're going to do it. And that one hooked me. That one got me sucked in. Cody Rhodes winning got me. And I believe Rhea Ripley beating Shayna Baszler in NXT. That one got me. There's a video that is about 6 minutes long of me jumping around with excitement like a little kid. This got me. I was bitching through this entire build-up for this impromptu match. Motor City Machine Guns end up defeating DIY. Bloodline come down and basically challenge Motor City Machine Guns that night for their number one contendership. And Motor City Machine Guns said, all right, you want to do it? Let's do it. Nick Aldis is trying to talk them out of it. They end up making the match. And next thing you know, you've got Jimmy showing up. He takes out a couple of the guys on the outside, hits Solo, hits Jacob Fatu. Next thing you know, Roman's music hits. Roman's at the top of the ramp. Jacob Fatu runs up the ramp. Roman takes him out. And things are starting to really break down as Solo, Jimmy, Roman, and Jacob go up the ramp and exit. And next thing you know, it's Motor City Machine Guns, and it is the Tongans. There's a ref bump. Chairs are now getting involved. When a masked man comes through the crowd, it's Jey Uso. Jey Uso is now involved in this, and he takes out both the Tongans, sets it up so the Motor City Machine Guns can get the win. So let me just rewind a little bit. When they were going through this, I'm like, this is stupid. I hate this. This is dumb. Why are they going to do this right now? These guys are going to lose their number one contendership here because I just didn't see them taking the belts off the Tongans. Because, again, Triple H with his short runs on champions seems to be what the theme is here. And I was like, this doesn't make any damn sense to me. This is stupid. This is no way to get a brand new tag team over. This doesn't make any sense. And look, I'm in love with Motor City Machine Guns. You and I watched a lot of TNA as kids. I grew up with the Motor City Machine Guns. I think they're one of the indie wrestlers that never really got a fair shake when Vince was in charge. And I'm so happy that they're getting their WWE flowers now. I know that they're a bit of an advanced age, but these guys can still move. These guys put on a hell of a match against DIY. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Anyways, I was bitching the whole time because I did not foresee this ending. This shocked me. This surprised me. So as they're getting closer to wrapping this match up, and you can see the writing is on the wall, Motor City Machine Guns are going to win this. I'm jumping up and down out of my seat. My baby just went down for bed. The wife is yelling at me. She's like, be quiet. You're going to wake the baby. I was so excited, almost brought to tears. I was pumped up when the Motor City Machine Guns defeated the Tongans and became your new SmackDown Tag Team Champs. Again, Jimmy, Roman, taking on Solo and Jacob. They exit. They go up the ramp. Jey jumps in at ringside and takes out the Tongans. We're going to talk about all of that with the Bloodline here in a moment. But how excited and how pumped up were you to see some Detroit boys in the Motor City Machine Guns, some dudes who have basically grinded their entire career? And when we say entire career, I mean like 30 plus years on the indies, doing everything, helping train most of the wrestlers that you are watching today. Most of the tag team wrestling you see today have taken something from these guys, if not were trained by these guys. These guys are foundational pieces in the world of wrestling. And for them to finally get their WWE flowers, 3 matches in, which to me is crazy, 3 matches in, they are now your new SmackDown Tag Team Champs. And they put on a hell of a match against DIY. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And DIY is a little bit rocky there. There's some underlying things that will probably get discussed next week on SmackDown. How excited were you for these guys? And did it make you jump out of your chair? Did it make you sit up with excitement? Where were you at when you watched this?
No doubt. It was crazy. You look at it and you say, you know what? It also clearly has a lot of layers to this. Clearly, Triple H has a fondness for tag team wrestling, has a respect for those that have done it a long time. Clearly, with AJ Styles,
I think Triple H a little bit frustrated with the Tongans as well.
And you also look at it, AJ Styles comes in after a run in TNA. Everyone knows they're over. And also, too, I wouldn't put it past WWE to say, look, WWE has a partnership with TNA. Look how we did it. AEW had a partnership with TNA, and it amounted to jack shit. And you look at it and you say, hey, this is a respect thing. A weekend, and they're the champions. And look, everybody in wrestling knows who these guys are. So the belt doesn't mean anything to really their brand, their legacy, other than it's a nod from a company that says, hey, welcome to the big show. We don't need to do a slow build. We know and recognize you as the best. The world recognizes you as the best, and the best should have the title. Simple as that. But I do think that the WWE TNA partnership is looking a little bit better for TNA and the superstars that show up in WWE than it ever did for AEW. So it's a lot of different factors. But look, Triple H is one of the boys. He recognizes, hey, these guys, look, there is a value to grinding on the indie scene. There are guys that are producers. Like, you don't think Bobby Roode sits there and goes to Triple H, hey, you know what we got here. And Triple H is like, yeah, we got some good shit here. And boom, makes it fun because there is an element of surprise, like, holy shit, like you said, you popped because you thought it was going to be next week. So it was crazy. It's well deserved, and it's really cool to see the entrances of the Motor City Machine Guns with the thumb up in the air, or with the hand palm showing the great state of Michigan. So Motor City Machine Guns, well deserved. Let's go. Give them a run, maybe of 97 days as opposed to the 80 days. Let's get them at least to WrestleMania. I think that the goal probably should be, okay, my next step is good. We're good with them. We can have them have a WrestleMania tag match and get their moment.
Yeah, and look, all of this was great, and I loved every moment of this. The one thing I did not like from this, I felt like it distracted from these guys' moment, and it was what took place at the end. So these guys are now crowned your tag team champs, and I'm excited. I'm pumped. I checked the clock, and I'm like, oh, man, we still got a little bit of time. What's going to happen here? And you see Jey Uso roll into the ring. He's standing in the middle of the ring, and he's kind of looking down at his feet, and these guys exit up the ramp, and, they're doing their thing. They're celebrating. And next thing you know, you have Jimmy Uso come out from the back. And Jimmy Uso stands at the top of the ramp, walks down the ramp, and jumps in the ring with Jey Uso, and they hug and embrace. Cut real fast, you see Roman Reigns at the very, very top of the ramp, and he looks like he is in pain. These two are embracing, and Roman looks like he's like, what is going on here? What did you make of this? Because a couple of things. I love Jimmy and Jey coming back. I love Jimmy and Jey embracing. I'm upset that Jey lost his IC championship, but I think it's fantastic that these two are coming back together. They're reuniting, and the reason they're reuniting is to take out the bloodline. Roman's look of pain, looking like he is constipated at the very top of the ramp, makes me question what he is thinking and what is going on. Now, this makes me tune in next week, which is what you want. It's a great move. But I am curious to see how Roman and Jey will evolve their relationship and try to move past this. And I think that is probably the storyline that we're going to get as we build towards Survivor Series. Where are you at with all of this? Because I thought this was good. I did not like the fact that it ended the show and this took away from the brand new SmackDown Tag Team Champs that we have. But storyline-wise, I think this was an awesome move. I thought this was really, really good. Again, I don't feel like Jey needed to lose his belt. And again, I don't feel like this needed to come right at the very end of the show when the SmackDown Tag Team Champs are brand new and they're recently crowned and they're trying to have their moment. And again, these are guys that commentary has told you has spent their entire life on the indie scene, has spent their entire life in TNA, has spent their entire life looking for this one moment, only for it to kind of feel like it was glossed over a little bit because Jimmy and Jey needed to hug it out and Roman needed to be the cutaway final fade to black scene. What were your thoughts on how all of it just kind of shook out and ended?
Yeah, look, Motor City Machine Guns are great, but still, they're new. This is beyond that. So the TV time goes to the biggest story. And yeah, I would have loved the Machine Guns to end and to have the executive producer tag show up there. But at the same token, it's the bloodline, and everybody's going to love it. Everyone's going to be like, whoa, it built up to that moment, and it's fine. I get it. Look, in the end, for the Motor City Machine Guns, like we said, the belt, the crowning of the belt is just the formality of like, okay, this is the stamp. We acknowledge you. Just them getting into the company was good enough. When they debuted, okay, they belong. They're professional wrestlers. They've arrived in the big show finally. They get their flowers. But now we got to also address the biggest storyline as we keep inching forward on television, which is, okay, the Civil War is ever so close to inching along to officially getting started. And the scene was great with Roman Reigns and him standing at the top, the emotion. But I'll be honest, I thought that Jey kind of overacted the emotion part. You know what I mean? Like the gritty teeth thing. I just think you just kind of be more natural. Hug your brother, not like, it is a little bit aggressive, in that way. I just thought it would have been maybe even more to hug and then brotherly shoves or bumps together or whatever. Maybe even do the Uso dance or whatever, But in the end, Civil War starting. They announced it. They're doing it. They're moving forward. And I think that when you have the executive producer credit roll there, it looks like, all right, this is cool. This is where we're going with it. And It was great to see the Bloodline Bloodline 2.0 take a step backwards, and the original OGs are starting to get the band back together. And so you know what that means. You know what the next pop's going to be, right? SZ. It's got to get back. It's got to be SZ, baby. Sami Zayn has to get into the mix and bring everybody back.
Well, see, this is what I was going to ask you, right? So, like, obviously, Bloodline has 4 people. If The Rock's going to be involved, that's your 5th. The OG Bloodline, they're 3 men deep. So who's that next person? Who's going to be that 4th person? Is it going to be Sami Zayn? We've heard rumors that Hikuleo is working down in NXT, and I think that was done because the Tongans came up and they underimpressed when they were brought up. You had a couple of botched spots, and that's why I said that I feel like part of the reason the belts were taken off of them is there was a little bit of unease with them being your champs because they really didn't defend the belts all that much. And when they did defend the belts, there were a couple of blown spots and a couple of things that fans really, really blew up on the internet. And so WWE doesn't ever really like their product looking bad like that. So might have been time to make that change to get those belts off them. So is it Hikuleo? There's also rumors and conversations that Zilla Fatu might be involved and might be looking to come to WWE. You know, this family is so deep. There are documentaries online about this family tree, and it can really and truly, if you look at one of your walls in one of your rooms, you could start at the very, very top of your ceiling and work your way all the way down to the very, very bottom and go from left to right. That's how deep this family is. So there are guys and wrestlers all over the place that they can pull in to add another member. But do you believe, you said Sami Zayn, do you believe it's going to be Sami Zayn's going to be the next person? Going to make it all oozy, if you will.
I do. I think it's great. That's the best way to do it is to, well, maybe probably formerly will be Paul Heyman gets back in the mix. You bring him back in for a nice pop, and then you get the.
Do you think Paul Heyman's the guy? Because remember, Paul Heyman was kind of the guy who was kind of on the outs with Sami Zayn.
Right.
Had that rough relation. Maybe Paul Heyman is now the guy who's like, we have to get Sami. Yeah. We need to go get Sami.
Yep.
And it's kind of, everybody has an about face, right? It's a complete 180 this time around.
Yep. And then maybe Sami's like, well, and maybe he decides, however that goes. But man, it's just so good, man. So good. The fact that this is being put together in a great way. It's going to take, man, the storyline's been over 2-3 years now. And
it's been so long, but it's so good.
It's so good, and that moment that has kind of also broke the internet was on Raw. I thought my favorite moment of the week to me, and we could just declare it now. To me, the show of the week was Raw. I just thought that when Braun Breaker won, and then you realize, oh man, he's staring across from the biggest star now. What's his name again now? Refresh my memory. From the Bloodline, the biggest star that people think.
Jacob Fatu.
When he stood across from Jacob Fatu, everybody was like, oh man, we want to see this.
Everybody lost their shit.
Everybody wants to see Jacob Fatu fight everybody because it's almost crazy that Jacob Fatu has already been, maybe even transcends the Bloodline right away. So that's pretty sick. Yeah. That's pretty sick. And
here, just to give you a little bit of insight, the reaction backstage, when they were watching this in Gorilla, everybody was incredibly happy. Everybody was pumped, and they did not it was one of those things that they were looking for. And a lot of times what happens with WWE is they'll do something, and then they will gauge the crowd reaction. They know what they can pivot to later on. This is one of those things that they thought might pop, but they weren't quite sure, and they were not quite sure it was going to pop as hard as it did. So they were pleasantly surprised, and they were very pleased with what they seen. So just a little background there. So put that away in the back of your pocket, because I think we might be getting this match sooner than later.
Yeah, I love it. And then to me, real fast, on SmackDown, I for some reason, I got to see it. I didn't really like the Gunther Cody promo. I liked Cody showing aggression, but I just felt like that reminded me of Cookie Cutter. I'm the man, and it was inauthentic. I think that's the best way to look at it. It didn't feel real. Like, I just felt like, maybe I think that they're trying to push the promo game on Gunther, but I just think more physicality. I just think that Cody has matches. There's Gunther to destroy him, backstage stuff, more creative stuff. I just think traditional promo with them going back and forth was kind of very flat, and it was weird too because it made Cody look a little bit off too in the fact that they had this promo. It didn't move it forward, but I did like that Cody stepped up and said, okay, I'm just going to go at it. And it was kind of a change of pace. But I just felt like the build for this, you don't really even need to have a build too much because it's Cody versus Gunther. I mean, it's just, hey, I'm better than you. Let's go. I can't wait to have this match. And I know you need to have some kind of build, but it kind of harkened back to the way in which builds were that I didn't like.
Yeah, look, I didn't mind. I liked seeing Cody get physical. I did like that. I thought this was a great way where you can work in parts of what's left of Imperium. I liked that Cody was the aggressor because Cody is usually the guy who is very standoffish, very stands back, and he's more reactionary, right? You punch me, I'm going to punch you back, but I'm not going to go find you to punch you. He's not necessarily the bully. In this, Cody, you got to see a little bit of that aggression, a little bit of him being just kind of fed up and done. He's been pushed to his limit, and he's like, you know what? The only way this is going to get fixed is if I hit you. I like that. I thought that was good. I don't necessarily need to see Gunther doing long promos. I don't think it's his forte. I think he does a fantastic job with vignettes. I think he does a fantastic job when he gets in the ring and he says a couple of lines and then he hits you. But I don't need him to be a talking champion. I feel like he needs to be more of a physically menacing, physically imposing champion. I think that is a little bit more his role, a little bit more his speed. And I like what I got out of Cody. I just don't necessarily think it meshes. I don't think these two necessarily mesh well on the microphone across from each other. And I think maybe that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been funny to me as you were talking. Unfortunately, like I said, Cody's the face, but it would have been funny if, they're standing there and Cody just harkens back and goes, Gunther, I'm just looking back, and you go to the screen and you have the fat Gunther, and you look back and go, what the hell did you do? Are you taking something? We know, that sometimes, international stars may not be all natural, and just kind of play into some, like he's a cheater, kind of ideal, like, oh, you state that you're the best. Are you enhanced? I mean, I know it's probably taboo to talk like that, but it'd be funny.
Yeah.
Like, are you enhanced, Gunther? Are you taking something? Do you have to leave this ring right now to get your shot? You know what I mean? And then the crowd would have went ape shit, something different. But, in the end, they did it. I like the physicality at the end. But, yeah, you're right. No promos. But SmackDown Raw, WWE had a good week, and they're generating a lot of buzz. And some of it, too, unfortunately, and you'll talk about it in news, generated by a departure that kind of saddened a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. And we will talk a little bit about what's going on there. We'll talk about that during news. But let's transition over to AEW. And I thought AEW was a good show. I thought it was highlighted by a couple of moments. I know that there was some stuff that you didn't like. The one thing that I took out of it, especially the early part of the show, is Kyle Fletcher is destined to be a star if he's not already a star. I thought Kyle Fletcher coming out, looking the way he looks, I felt like he looked like $1 million. Yeah, he looks like he's some kind of knockoff surf boy hanging out in California. He's got his little Aussie accent. He looks the part, right? Looks $1 million, and he's with Don Callis and all this stuff. But when he cut his promo, and you got to see the intensity in his promo, especially when he kept screaming, "I'm better than you. I'm not in your shadow." When he went and he took the clippers and he shaved his head, the intensity that you got from Kyle Fletcher this week really put him over the top for me. I thought his in-ring work was very good. I thought he needed to be given a little bit more rope. And I think the way things have set up with him attacking Will Ospreay, him working to get out of Will Ospreay's shadow, and him cutting his promo with the intensity that he cut it and the believability that he cut it with, and him shaving his own head. To me, I was like, this guy's a star. He is there. They just need to not screw this up. Do you believe Kyle Fletcher is destined to be a star, or do you think maybe he already is a star, like I already think he is, and they just need to not mess this up?
You got to have as many heels as possible. You are creating people that are going to be next, and I think that working with Will Ospreay will always allow someone to get additional attention. Kyle Fletcher has been over. So it's just one of those things now where I think this opportunity for him will give him the opportunity to get more of his what he brings to the table over. And I do think that, and everybody says being a heel is so much more, a little bit easier to get heat, to get yourself attention. But in the end, you got to have good matches, and you got to be available, you got to be around, and you got to consistently do the things you got to do to progress. But yes, I think that from for the last month or so, we've been talking about, okay, we know what's coming, and now it's up to Kyle Fletcher. You've been given the ball. Now do something with it to continue, because that's what I think when we look at it globally, AEW has been giving people opportunities, but for whatever reason, it just always seems like they're a pinch or two of salt short of a beautiful chili. You know what I mean? It's like, man, you're always something short. It's like you keep trying to taste, and you keep trying to give different guys the opportunity, and it just doesn't right, because in the end, you got to have good creative, you got to have good personality, good promos, and you got to have a good match. And for whatever reason, all three just haven't hit for a lot of guys consistently. And when it does, I do think Kyle Fletcher might have a chance to kind of take that ball and do something with it.
Yeah, look, I think with Don Callis kind of helping guide him as well. Look, you say what you want about Don Callis. Don Callis has a great wrestling mind. I think that was a perfect pairing for him. I think this guy, again, I need to count on Tony Khan and his creative team to not screw this up. So if I was able to remove the variable of Tony Khan, I feel like this could go to the moon. I feel like this would be awesome. I'm excited to see what they do with Kyle Fletcher. I'm excited to see what happens with Will Ospreay. I think Kyle Fletcher coming off of this promo needs to beat Will Ospreay 2 or 3 times and really needs to mess Will Ospreay up. Really help put him up there, help elevate him, get him where he needs to be. And then at some point, Will Ospreay can get the win back. But I think Kyle Fletcher needs to kind of go on a bit of a tear, just taking guys out, and Will Ospreay needs to be taken out by him a couple of times. We'll see what happens. I feel like you've got something here, but very similar to Willow Nightingale. Felt like you had something there, and then you botched it. Same thing with Chris Statlander. Felt like you had something there, and then you botched it. I feel like that with a couple of the other wrestlers that you have. You have something there, and then you botched it. Daniel Garcia is a prime example. Feel like you were doing a really good job building him, and then I don't know. Sammy Guevara is on the side of milk cartons for the most part. I know he got to wrestle this week on Dynamite, but I don't know. So you've got guys, and you sometimes don't do what you're supposed to do with them. One of those guys that you really didn't do enough with, in my opinion, is a guy like Orange Cassidy. I kind of want to get into this new story arc with Orange Cassidy that they've kind of laid out and they've kind of set at your feet. Early in the day, Chucky T, who is no longer wrestling, he's now working as a producer because he has a degenerative ankle. Like, he can't wrestle anymore. So Chucky T runs out and grabs a couple of the guys and like, hey, your match is on next. He stops to have a quick conversation with Orange Cassidy, and he's like, hey, like, you beat the BCC before. You beat Jon Moxley. You need to step up and you need to be more in front. You need to play a bigger role, because Orange Cassidy has kind of been checked out of a lot of things. Orange Cassidy has just kind of been going along with the flow. He's doing his thing with the conglomeration, and really by doing his thing with the conglomeration, he's just carrying a backpack. So what ends up happening is the BCC gets their hands on Chucky T. Everybody all the faces are waiting at the gates for the BCC to show up. They opened the show waiting for them. They're still waiting there by the end of the show, and this is taking place at the end of the show. Marina Shafir pulls up. She jumps out of her truck. She's the only one there. BCC has snuck in around the back, and they've grabbed Chucky T, and they have basically destroyed Chucky T in the ring, just annihilated, put a chair around his head and stomped the chair. And all of the faces now run down to the ring after they realize that they've been duped. And BCC ends up exiting the ring, Orange Cassidy kneeling over his best friend, Chucky T. It feels as though we are building to Orange Cassidy being the guy who's going to save AEW. To me, it feels as though we are going to get a much more driven and intense version of Orange Cassidy. We're going to get a guy with a purpose. Orange Cassidy's character has been very laissez-faire, very laid back. He is He takes the resemblance of a sloth when he wrestles. It's kind of just kind of movements that are unnecessary or very necessary depending on the circumstance, and I just kind of move at my own pace, and you're not going to knock me off my own pace. This seems like this is going to be a complete 180 character shift. And I don't know where you're at with it, but I'm totally here for a revamped, more driven, more in your face, more intense Orange Cassidy, a guy with a goal, a guy with a mission, a guy who is a little bit fired up. Remember, Orange Cassidy, I think it was for the first year, didn't even talk on the microphone. Or if he did, it was something like, cool. That was it. It was one word. Orange Cassidy has talked more on the microphone. I am waiting for the day when Renee Paquette goes to Orange Cassidy and he grabs the microphone out of her hand, and you can see the vein in his bicep bulging as he's holding the microphone, and he's looking in the camera screaming how he's coming for Jon Moxley and how he's going to work his way through everybody in the BCC because of what they did. I am pumped up if we get this version of Orange Cassidy. What are your thoughts on us possibly getting a more intense and driven Orange Cassidy? And I want to know if this is the part of AEW that you really didn't like, was kind of how this all shook out.
No, what shook out to me was I thought the highlight, that the focal point was the ladder match. What I thought the way that it shook out, beginning, middle, end, had the potential for something. But no, this is great because I do think Orange Cassidy is a guy that should have been a bigger star than he is right now. So you gotta move this along a little bit and get him to where, you know, his title reign was inconsequential. It meant jack shit. It doesn't last, has no legacy. It's just he's there. So to me, you gotta elevate his personality and get his character to the next level. So I'm happy with what I saw there completely. To me, the most disappointing aspect of Dynamite was the ladder match. It had all the potential in the world to be great. You have good, hard-working individuals that know how to make this match happen. I can understand, Big Bill getting involved, helping Chris Jericho. The result is fine, no big deal. But to me, you can't expose the business and have, Briscoe blade himself on television.
On television? Yeah, I was like, what the fuck?
Everyone was looking at it like, what the fuck is this? And thankfully, my kids were in the room, but it was like, were we supposed to see that? Like, he's sitting there, grabs it, does it, puts it away, and you're still there. Then you go to the double.
Dude, this is the second time that I can recall that they've done this. They did it with Jon Moxley, where he's just sitting in the middle of the ring cutting his head.
So, to me, okay, that's a glaring issue. And I'm like, of course, to joke around, I said, Kenny got a job in the directing AEW now? Great. It's like, shouldn't somebody say camera one, a little bit faster? So that was a big botch. But then you have Chris Jericho winning, and right away, and then all of a sudden Ishii comes out, and I'm like, huh? They just totally rushed through a celebration, and I was just like, wait a minute. Okay, my brain was just still handling what I just saw, and then they just rushed right. I'm like, you could have just waited, you could have just, I don't know, in a week or so, Chris Jericho has a nice backstage segment, he's having a party, and he's touting how great he is, and then Ishii shows up, because I don't think the crowd understood what the hell was going on. You can't, we joke around, but, yes, the world is ADHD, but it just, Tony Khan can't be that way. You got to slow down the heat a little bit. It feels like Tony Khan, when he does a barbecue, cranks the grill up to 500 degrees and is just like, let's cook. It's like, no, the idea is slow, low and slow. That's how you get the juices going. Tony's like, I'm going to crank everything up to 1,000 degrees and just go angle. It's like, you can't have Young Bucks booking all the way through. You know what I mean? It can't just go result, next angle. It's like, let it simmer. You didn't need Ishii to come out right there. It's like, okay. So to me, the ladder match was botched right from that moment on, and it was just like, okay. The only thing really that consistently gets going is MJF, because he's just a star. But after that, it just always feels like there's letdowns with AEW in regards to their execution of a show, and especially at this point of their development. It's like, come on, dude, you got to kind of tighten the ship a little bit here, and you don't need to just cram everything down our throats within 4 seconds. Let the man put the belt on. Let's have some fun with it. Not the way that they did it. And to me, it soured Dynamite. To me, it went from what I thought was a B+ show to a C-.
Yeah, and look, I didn't necessarily understand why Chris Jericho needed to win a championship here. To me, it didn't make any sense. These two just had a match, and Mark Briscoe beat Chris Jericho. How Chris Jericho gets another shot at that championship, and this time in a ladder match, didn't make any sense to me. And then you're right. AEW has a really bad time with allowing stuff to breathe, allowing you to take in a moment and kind of see where things are going to go, letting you invest yourself in what's taking place. They don't give you enough time. They don't give you enough time to really understand the importance of something. They don't give you enough time to let what the announcers, because remember, announcers play a major part in what goes on in wrestling. They do not give the announcers enough time to really give you the information through commentary and tell you what you kind of need to know and let that sink in and just allow you to digest that. It is move. And it's like, okay, just pause for a second. Just wait 1 second. Like Mark Briscoe just lost his match. Like there's no close up on Mark Briscoe, who has been holding that belt for a little bit now. There's none of that. You're not even getting to watch Chris Jericho celebrate, and you're not even getting to really watch Big Bill celebrate with Chris Jericho. We're cutting right to Ishii returning. And here's the deal. I need you to kind of fill me in a little bit on what's the storyline here with Ishii and Chris Jericho. And you don't get any of that because you fade right to a commercial. And you're just kind of like, okay, well, I guess we'll get it next week, maybe, because AEW does a shit job of following up on storylines. So maybe we'll get it. I don't know. Look, I agree with you 110%. I felt like that was a match that was not necessary. It was, I didn't get it. The way it was produced, I just didn't get it. I feel like their production is not great. It's not fantastic. It is pretty frustrating. Was there anything else from AEW that really stood out to you?
No, I thought that I did like the Ricochet match on Rampage. I like his new finishing move. I do think that, slowly but surely, the way he's being portrayed in AEW, you do look at him like he looks important. So that's good. Now I just need him to kind of get involved in some stuff that's meaningful. I'm glad. I think Ricochet in AEW is the right fit. I just hope that he can get the intended consequence of having stuff that's relevant. Because he's a star. He's got something. He's got it. So let's just give him some stuff that's going to be relevant for him. And I do think that I think he's his finisher is a lot better than in the previous iteration. So let's see where they go from there. Orange Cassidy, Ricochet, they got to take advantage of their opportunities and do some things.
What did you think about MVP and Ricochet's interaction on Dynamite, where MVP gave him his card and Ricochet seemed to kind of pause for a second? They even addressed some of their WWE happenings where MVP was like, look, new company, new us. Let's let bygones be bygones. I'm interested in you. Let me know what you're thinking. And Ricochet seemed to give it a little bit of thought. Where are you at with that? Do you like MVP basically going around and trying to solicit everybody?
It's fun, yeah. I do. I like that. At least it sets up a natural angle as to why. The why is set up when the Hurt Business goes after Ricochet. So no problems with it at all. I do think that for MVP, this will be a nice opportunity to actually fulfill stuff that can happen. And it just stinks too, because you look at Bobby Lashley, you look at Shelton Benjamin, MVP, it just feels like, okay, they had their run, but once they kind of hit the dip back down, it's always difficult to kind of maintain that relevancy like The Miz has, where you still are involved, but I think after Bobby Lashley's title run, it just kind of fell flat. So it's hopefully their stuff gets over and they can have a nice run in AEW.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm interested to see where this MVP arc is going to go. Look, I know Bobby Lashley is coming at some point. I think this group needs to be built up of more than Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin, even though Shelton Benjamin has been displayed as an indomitable force, as a guy who is just going to wreck shop. I think that is fantastic. That's the way you introduce a new wrestler. That's the way you get a guy over. Now, in some of these matches, he has had a couple of spots where he's had to struggle to get the win, but for the most part, he seems to find another gear to kick it in, and then he just annihilates you. And I think it's a great way to really show off a new wrestler. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with MVP. I want to get to show of the week. I believe you said Raw was your show of the week this week.
That was, to me, the best show. I thought that the 2 hours flew by. SmackDown was a very close second. The title reign, obviously Cody Rhodes, and you have the Bloodline. But I felt like kind of taking the situations and the angles that are going on Raw was very, very well done.
I'm going to go with SmackDown. Look, thought Raw was good. I did not agree with the ending of Raw, and that put a sour taste in my mouth. However, I did enjoy, for the most part, the ending of SmackDown. Seeing the Motor City Machine Guns get the championship belts, I thought was cool. You're getting to see the Bloodline OGs come back together. I think that's really cool. So I'm going to give my point to SmackDown this week. Are you ready for some news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
A shocking announcement that rocked the WWE world. On Monday afternoon, Samantha Irving revealed that she has left her role as WWE Raw ring announcer and would be leaving the company. The announcement was made on Irving's personal social media as she went on to thank the fans, the wrestlers, and the production crew. Dave Meltzer would provide further insight, revealing that Irving has been thinking about this for some time, stating she has been thinking about it, WWE exit, for about a year. She wants to be a singer. She is a singer. She also plays the flute. She wants to get more involved with her music. It is something that she's been talking about for a long, long time and finally pulled the trigger on it. It's not like a plan to go to AEW. Not saying 100% that she won't go. Ricochet actually tweeted that she's not going and that wasn't her intention to go there. She left on her own. It's something she's been considering. She didn't grow up a wrestling person. She grew up as a musical person, and this was her passion, and she's trying to follow her passion. Lillian Garcia will reprise her role and take over for Irving. In a social media post, Garcia ended it saying, "Okay, WWE Universe, I look forward to seeing you, signing your autographs, giving you high fives, and all that. I love you. I'm back home." Lillian Garcia's first Monday Night Raw could have been better. I know you aren't necessarily a huge fan of Samantha Irving's. I'm a monster fan of Samantha Irving's. I think she's done a fantastic job, and they've given her a lot of rope to do stuff because Vince McMahon was very critical of his ring announcers. He wanted them to say certain things, certain ways, and do stuff in a very matter-of-fact way. That's part of the reason why people went over to AEW. Justin I want to say Justin Rogers, but that's not it. But he's doing what he's doing over at AEW because Vince would not let him do what he had to do. I thought Samantha Irving was given a lot of latitude to do a lot of really cool things, and I thought she added a fantastic voice, and you would know when it was a big match because she gave it a very big match feel. Lillian Garcia, in her first day, announced that it was a WWE Containers match instead of Contenders match. Lillian Garcia also announced that Dominic Mysterio was coming to the ring when Dominic Mysterio was nowhere to be seen. So she's got some rust that she's got to work off. What are your thoughts of Lillian Garcia coming back?
Yeah, I like the new lady on SmackDown. I thought that she kind of sounded very similar to Samantha. You're talking about Justin Roberts, who also kind of...
Yeah.
He had his opportunity in WWE and kind of has taken advantage of it. But yeah, look, to me, I would have also made it a bit. I would have had a competition and just have a bunch of ring girls and a bunch of maybe wrestlers, bunch of people that are future broadcasters. Have a nice big competition reality show and give it a go. But Lillian is a blast from the past. Yeah, it's 8 years is a long time. So she'll get back into her groove. It maybe ended up being a last minute kind of thing. It's always tough when you're out of the company for a while and get back in it. It's a new era. So she'll get into the flow. It's fine. I don't think that it'll take too long. And if not, they'll make the decision quickly. But yeah, Samantha's a loss. But as long as her Twitter page is active, I think she'll share with the world what she wants, and I think many people will still stay happy. Will still be happy to follow her journey and what she wants to share on social media. So we'll see if she does end up at the other company. But I always think it's crazy that you can't balance doing other stuff with doing WWE, because in the end, when you elevate yourself, it just makes you even a more of a marketable star to watch her on WWE. So for her doing all her social media stuff, her talents, I just think, yeah, girl, do whatever you want. Start a podcast. We're going to need you to be a valet. We're going to need you to kind of become a character because you're over. So I just thought that if a talent of her caliber says, I want to do something, just say yes. I mean, what would the harm be? But we don't know the full story as to what else happened, because to me, it would always be tough for a lady to be in that company because the testosterone's so high that, and when you dated a wrestler and he leaves, it's just going to make it so that you never see the person. So there's going to be a lot of factors, but I would have made it so that she would have just been, feel torture to leave. But that's how it goes. And no more Samantha, but thankfully her Twitter page is still alive.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're excited about her Twitter page, but no, I think you're great. Once Ricochet left, you kind of had to feel like the writing was probably going to be on the wall, because, like you said, if you're a couple, it's hard to see each other. She's on the road so much, and she is the number one ring announcer. She is in the number one spot. So when you're going to Saudi Arabia, when you're going to Detroit, when you're going here, you're doing these different matches and these different live shows, she's the one. It is her. So it was going to be tough. You had to figure it was going to be a little bit difficult. Speaking of things that are difficult, WWE is in another difficult spot as they are embroiled in yet another lawsuit. A new lawsuit has been filed against WWE, Vince McMahon, Linda McMahon, and TKO that includes allegations of sexual abuse. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of the Ring Boys, who claim to have been abused after they were hired to work for WWE. A snippet of the lawsuit says this lawsuit is filed on behalf of 5 survivors of sexual abuse. The survivors, John Does 1 through 5, were known within WWE as Ring Boys, underage boys hired by the organization's ringside announcer and ring crew chief, Melvin Phillips Jr., to assist with errands and other tasks in preparation for WWE wrestling shows. The underage Ring Boys were groomed, exploited, and sexually abused by Phillips, who targeted children from broken homes. His sexual assaults occurred not only at wrestling venues, but also in hotel rooms and other locations where Phillips would shuttle the boys in plain sight. Defendants were fully aware of the systematic and pervasive abuse and did nothing to prevent or stop it. The FBI previously identified at least 10 Ring Boys abused by Phillips, but there are likely countless others who have suffered in silence for decades. So the Ring Boys, I don't know, what do we want to call it? I don't want to call it a lawsuit, but this conversation of there being young boys that were hired by Melvin Phillips Jr. is being brought back to the forefront. This was discussed in the recent Vince McMahon documentary. This was a very big deal. I believe it was in the late 70s, early 80s. And it is now being rehashed again, this time in a lawsuit. So we'll see where this goes. We'll see what takes place. It sounds like only 5 out of the 10 that were identified are still alive. That's why it's John Does 1 through 5 that are being represented. But again, another lawsuit for WWE. This is a company that has a very distorted and ugly history. And a lot of it all lies at Vince McMahon's feet. So really, really sad. That's going to do it for this week's wrestling news and notes.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. TNA taking place again at Wayne State. First time they're running a show there. It'll be great to see if Joe Hendry ends up defeating Nick Nemeth. Hardy Boys involved in a match. It's going to be very interesting. I think TNA has steadily improved their cachet. A lot of respect going to them for their work in terms of getting attention, their social media. They're doing press conferences, so very good work. They spent a week here, and the participants did a lot of media. They didn't end up showing up here, which should give us more motivation. Getting ghosted by Joe Hendry, especially when I made videos about Joe Hendry. So not biased, but I hope he loses to Nick Nemeth. I hope that to see Dolph Ziggler in a match will be cool, because I do think he's also taking advantage of his decision to leave. And I think, too, Matt Cardona is going to show up at Wayne State, so that's cool. And I think that there's opportunities for a fun TNA show, so we'll recap that, the experience of heading out to Wayne State. So It's a fun time in wrestling, always a good week, and AEW is starting to turn the corner in terms of angles and importance of the mid-carders, so we'll see how they evolve as this new television deal kicks off, as they get into, I'll say this, a couple weeks after their biggest pay-per-view, it doesn't feel like the momentum has been there that they would have needed. Like, typically, after WWE, WrestleMania, there's some good stuff, and this year it delivered with CM Punk and Drew and all that stuff. CM Punk celebrated a birthday this weekend, so a lot of good stuff happening for WWE, and AEW is now in the midst of reshuffling and figuring stuff out. Make sure anywhere that you listen to your favorite audio content, type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. Just hit that subscribe button. Be one of the DSP followers. We appreciate it. We appreciate everybody that listens. I can't wait for next Saturday as we preview the baddest event in town, the Saudi event. What do they want? They want big belts. They want big events, big moments. So let's see. It'll be good because we'll record it Saturday morning, and it'll come out Saturday morning, and we'll preview it before a 1 p.m. show in Saudi. So it'll be a fun time. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the latest episode of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.